worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here and healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 That is who you are.
Even when I don't see it, you're working. That is the basis of the message today. So glad to see everybody. You may be seated. Now just look around the room, look at your neighbor, wave and say, hi. This is usually our meet and greet session. We love just walking around talking and meeting people. However, the stipulations are unable to do that, but you guys can also be seated. But I've got in midst of all the chaos that this nation has been in for the past week and a half, I've just got just a quick little encouraging video.
morning, everyone. So glad to see so many out today. Just a few announcements to go over. Tuesday at 5:30 will be the Grief Share meeting, and it will be the last session with that. And Brother Mark Singleton will be the guest speaker for that. Wednesday at 7 p.m., the Bible study here at the church. That's Facebook and Instagram. And then Wednesday at 8 p.m. is Facebook Live and Instagram. And then Sunday, well, it's starting today and for the next few Sundays, and we'd like to see it take off and stay happening quite a bit. It's going to be called Share the Love. And Sister Ruth has come up with making birthday cards, anniversary cards, and get well cards for everyone. So if you'd like to help with that, that will start today at 5 p.m. and then each Sunday going forward at 5 o'clock. It's all the announcements that I have. I'm sorry.
I've got to tell you this, but we had an emergency ramp come up. It's Tuesday at 9 o'clock. If anybody has got just a few moments, it takes about an hour and a half. It's located in Richland. The gentleman's got blood cancer and has lost his mobility, and we're going to build a ramp for him. We'd love for whoever come out and help. And then on Friday morning at 10 o'clock, I called Richard Hudson after I saw the devastation of his farm during the flood, and you're having a work day there at 10 o'clock. We're meeting at Walmart at 10 because a lot of you don't maybe not know where it is, but he has gloves and he has snacks and food for everybody who wants to come and just help pick up and clean up. So two opportunities this week to serve. Tuesday at 9 at Lowe's and Friday at 10 at Walmart. If you have any more information, just get hold of me.
And we're so thankful that we have so many that's able to volunteer their time and the effort that everybody puts in for these handicap ramps and work days. But moving forward to our birthdays and anniversaries, do we have any birthdays today or this coming week? Peyton, it's your birthday? How old are you, Peyton? 8. How about any others in the room today? Saturday? Any others? Birthdays or anniversaries? Elmer Deal and Joanne has an anniversary today of... Oh, I don't know how that come up there, Elmer, but...
Mowing grass, and I got a phone call today. We're getting married in about 20 minutes.
Happy anniversary to Best Decision. And then also, we got just a couple of more birthdays. We got Jeff King on the 10th, Wednesday. And then also Brayley Wicks is Tuesday, the 9th. So happy birthday to them. I know some of them's watching online. Any others? Well, let's sing happy birthday to those. Happy birthday to be moving into our prayer request. Have a couple on here already. Macy Fuller, Maggie Boyd will be having surgery. Connie Horton, and also keep Shane's grandfather, Linkus Perkins, in your prayers. Any others to be mentioned today, Rodney?
Josh, the young man that was building the explosives and everything in town, Cole Kareem, let's just keep him in our prayers that if he turns his life around. I know that he was doing some evil things that he had planned on, but our prayers, I think God can touch him and help him.
Any other? Davey? Did you say Friday? Any others? If not, just stand up and we'll have a prayer for those that were mentioned. Brother Sam, you care to say a prayer for us? Amen. You may be seated. As Sam gets ready to come and lead us in our communion meditation, if you did not pick up your communion in the back, it is on the back table. And I do encourage everyone at home that's still watching by Facebook and different things, I do encourage them to take communion as well. Brother Sam.
Morning. It's good to be back in church, ain't it? Missed these times when we was not able to gather. All right. I'd like to talk a little bit about love today, something we all know. There are many different types of love. All right. Can y'all hear me better now? Many different types of love that we have in this world. We've got worldly possessions that we love. We've got loved ones, friends. We do a lot for them. And that's what I kind of want to focus a little bit on, is what we do, the things we do for the things that we love or the people we love. Some of us guys especially, now, I know you ladies like sports too, but most of us guys, we're big sports fans, right? We played sports in high school. Some of us are maybe still in high school and still playing these sports. We put a lot of our time, our energy, our efforts. We pour ourselves into it because we care for it. Okay? Not only the sports we love, but the people we love. All of us understand people we love. We've got moms, dads, brothers, sisters. We've got each other. And you know, we would walk to the ends of the earth for each other, right? And they would do the same for you. Well, that's some of the love that we like talking about. That's some of the love we need to remember all the time. And every Sunday, every Lord's Day, we need to come together just as Jesus told us, said, Jesus always gives us an example. We was talking about walking to the ends of the earth for some of the people we love. He's always leading by example, by loving us so much that he died on the cross for us. And he tells us in John 15:13, greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his friends. And Jesus also told us to keep his commandments in John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. And that's exactly what we're doing today, right now. As we come together, we assemble in this place, we're showing our love for God. We're showing our love for Jesus. We come together today to remember the love and the sacrifice that Christ himself made for us. And we take this little piece of bread and this little cup of juice, and we symbolically remember the love he showed for us. The Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians in chapter 11, starting in verse 24, it says, "And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, 'Take, eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me.' After the same manner he took the cup, and when he had supped, saying, 'This cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye as oft as ye drink it, in remembrance of me. And for as oft as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death till he come. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat of this bread and drink of this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body.'" And how we do this and how we partake in this worthily manner is we clear our minds of all our things that's going on in this old world today. We've got many, many troubles, trials, and tribulations. But we need to picture Jesus and that ultimate sacrifice and that ultimate love he showed us and how he endured all these things. This is a command, and this is the way we show him we love him. We come together every Lord's Day to partake of these emblems and to say, "Thank you, Lord. I love you, Lord," by doing this. So today, let's clear our minds, not think of our problems that's going on, any pandemic going on, and think of the good Lord above and think of his sacrifice. I'm going to ask Brother Josh to pray for us, and we'll take our communion.
You're raising her hand in the back. That's weird. Okay. Oh, she's not here. I trimmed mine this morning because yesterday I felt something. And I pulled it out and I thought, it's a piece of candy cane. I haven't eaten candy cane in months. Unless somebody's eating candy cane laying, over me in the bed. Mary, that's kind of odd, but still. Hey, it's so good to see everybody, guys. It really is. It is such a blessing to be back. You can't get the smile off my face when I come and I see you all here. But I'm going to tell you a story. There was a church that was preparing for their 200th anniversary celebration when disaster struck. The bell ringer got sick. So the preacher quickly hired another bell ringer, and apparently that's on the payroll there. And when they got the replacement, when he got there, the preacher took him up the steps leading up to the bell tower, some 150 feet high. And round they went, huffing and puffing up the stairs. And just as they reached the landing at the top, the bell ringer, he tripped and he fell face first right into the bell. Boom! And he stumbled backwards and he hit the landing, and then the railing broke, and then he rolled all the way down the steps. But miraculously, he was still alive. I mean, he was battered and bruised. So the preacher, he called the ambulance, and the ambulance came and took the man to the hospital. And after they left, the church secretary came out with paperwork to fill out. And he said, hey, I told the preacher, he asked him, he said, do you know the man's name? He said, no. The preacher said, I probably should have wrote it down, but his face sure rings the bell. We'll move on. A few years ago, there was a man who was diagnosed with progressive cancer. And his wife was so upset that she called her son. He was like the rock that held them all together, kind of. And his son, their son tried to help her understand the situation, but she couldn't seem to understand it. I mean, she was worried and anxious and upset all the time, wondering what they would do if something bad, worse happens. Her son said, Mom, everything is going to be okay. We just need to pray about it and let the Lord take care of it. And she sighed and she said, oh no. Has it come to that? Show that next picture there. Pray hardest when it's hardest to pray. There was a lady that came to grief share, and I think the world over, and she lost 2 sons within 12 weeks. She says, you know what? I used to pray for the safety of my children. What do I pray for now? I mean, that's what we do, though. When the hard times come, prayers and the Lord are lots of times our last resort. When it should be our first resort, the first thing that we do. And I don't know why life throws us curveballs, but it does, especially this year. It has been a rough year. We got killer hornets, and we got a global pandemic that has changed the way we live for a long time. We've got race riots, and none of these things are easy to deal with, but life can hurt sometimes. And we have all went through hurts like that. But, I have asked the same question of God that you have. Why? Why do you allow suffering and pain? Why don't you just take it all away, God, and just help us? I mean, where you are, God, when life doesn't make sense, where are you when we need you? We believe that God is all-powerful, so that means that He could stop all evil and suffering, right? I mean, He can do that. And we believe that God is all-loving, so that means that He should stop all evil and all suffering. So we believe that God could and should, but He don't. You and I sometimes think that He doesn't care. Why did this happen? There was a lady named Melissa. I think she was watching online in January. Love of her life, David, 53 years old. He died of cancer. Just a few weeks later, her dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And last Sunday at 4:01, he breathed his last breath. Why did that happen? You and I sometimes think that He doesn't care. Has your faith been under fire lately? Has it been tested because of the trials, struggles, and the sufferings that we have been through, or the pain that you are going through right now? I can't answer all those questions, but there are some realities that that you and I, we have to and need to come to grips when we come to question our suffering. The gift of life allows us the capacity to hurt. That emotion is a blessing. Because freedom comes with consequences. Freedom of choice comes with consequences. It is true that sometimes we suffer because of the sin of our life, right? Or because of the consequences of our own actions. I mean, a person who has smoked 3 packs a day all their life, and they can be sad when they're diagnosed with lung cancer or heart problems, but they shouldn't be surprised. The absent husband who pursued his career at the expense of his marriage can be devastated by his wife who's not home when he gets home from work one day. But he shouldn't be shocked. If you drink and drive and you're involved in an accident, God didn't make you do that. God gave mankind freedom. We are not creatures who don't have a choice. We do not serve a God and live in His created world as robots. We have free will, and we are able to think and to make our own decisions. But Isaiah 41, do not be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you and hold you up with my victorious right hand. You know, as Christians, Jesus is with us. He is involved in our lives, even when we cannot understand why we do not hear from Him. Just like the song that we said, even though we don't hear you, we know you're there. We understand that even if we don't hear from Him, or where is He when we are going through these hard times? We live in a mixed up world. It doesn't make sense sometimes. Sometimes terrible things happen that doesn't make any sense at all, and we wonder, why, God? It's okay to ask questions. They don't make any sense. Stephen Curtis Chapman. How many of you have ever heard of Stephen Curtis Chapman? He is one of the best singer-songwriters of contemporary Christian music. And over the last 20, 25 years or so, his songs have blessed millions of people. And a few years ago, tragedy struck his home when his 17-year-old son, Will Chapman, accidentally ran over his 5-year-old adopted sister, Maria, while he was backing out of their driveway. Stephen's oldest daughter, Emily, encouraged her parents to adopt. That's Maria and Stephen right there. To adopt the couple. And so they adopted 3 beautiful girls from China. They did missionary work in Chinese orphanages, and they started a charity named after their first adopted daughter, Shohana. And at the time of the accident, it was a celebratory occasion for them. The family was celebrating the engagement of their oldest daughter, Emily. And they were just hours away from a high school graduation party for their son, Caleb. But instead, they had to bury their child, who blew out 5 candles on a birthday cake less than 10 days before. Maria had just graduated church preschool. Let's listen to this little clip. This is Stephen and his wife on Good Morning America. And there's a little pause in between, but it's 2 clips.
It's very apparent, your faith. You live your faith. You're good people. And there are those who say, how can... They have a hard time seeing God in a tragedy like this. Have you questioned your faith? Has this made you at all question your faith?
Absolutely. My son said the other day that, we are a family, a lot of people say, of great faith, but we're a family with a lot of questions. But that's what faith is. It's living with the questions. It doesn't mean you have the answers. That's exactly what faith is.
You're grieving for your child, and then you have your other children as well that need your strength, and need to be consoled. How, as so many people want to know, how do you do that? How do you grieve and also be there for your children?
Well, that's probably been one of the greatest challenges about about walking through this, and one of the things we've prayed most for in terms of just needing strength and needing wisdom as parents, we've talked a lot, and you will hear all of us talk about the process of grieving with hope. That's such a, for us, that's what has kept us breathing, kept us alive, is that while we are grieving this process, there is a hope that we have, that we're anchored to in the midst of just what sometimes seems unbearable.
And said that after the ambulance had got there and they realized that there was no way they could save his daughter, the ambulance left, and his son Will took off running down the street. He was so emotional. And Stephen, in his grief, he ran after his son. And he got to him, just embraced, just cried and hugged. He said, I've already lost one child. I don't want to lose another. And it is situations like this that keep us asking, why? Have you ever asked God, why did this happen? Have you ever questioned God because of the circumstances and the situations and the suffering and the pain in your life? The Bible is full of questions of people asking and questioning God. Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you, at times of trouble, happen? How long will you hide your face from me? Life just doesn't seem fair sometimes. And the lessons that we have learned through life have taught us that life doesn't seem fair. Maybe you've had some lessons too, and you've learned those lessons when your spouse walked out the door, or at the cemetery near the grave of someone that you love, or the night before your surgery took place, or when your boss says, I'm sorry, we no longer need you, or the day when everything just comes unraveled. Ann's husband is 52 years old. Susan's dad, Chris's grandpa. Routine procedure. Psalm 13, 1 and 2. Oh Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever? How long will you look the other way? How long must I struggle with anguish in my soul, with sorrow in my heart every day? How long will my enemy have the upper hand? Life doesn't seem fair sometimes. Look at the Bible. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. Job had lost everything he had within minutes. John the Baptist was beheaded for really no reason. The apostles who were hand-chosen by Jesus to be his followers were beaten, tortured, and murdered for preaching the gospel. Even Apostle Paul, who God said was his chosen instrument. You would think that God would pave the streets of gold and you can go and no problems at all. You're going to have any issues. Paul said this in 2 Corinthians 11 and 24. He's given his testimony years later. 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and a day adrift at sea. I have traveled on my many long journeys. I have faced danger from rivers and from robbers. I have faced danger from my own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. I have faced danger in the cities, in the deserts, and on the seas. And I have faced danger from men who claim to be believers but are not. If our God is so great and so powerful and we are faithful to Him and we are living the way that He wants us to live, then why does it seem that He abandons us when we need Him the most? We must know that the times when God is silent, He's still there. You have to remember that you are not alone. And though we feel broken, in no way does it change who God really is. And when we become a Christian, it doesn't mean we have guaranteed happy, carefree life with smooth sailing. Just because sometimes we go through tough times, it doesn't mean that God is not at work. And one of my most cherished verses that I use quite often, I almost use it every week. I know I use it in every sermon. It's one of the few guarantees that we get in John 16 and 33. Jesus told His disciples that they are going to suffer. This is a guarantee. I have told you all of this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome overcome the world. God's desire for us is to have peace in the storm. That's part of his plan. A man found a cocoon. Any people that likes bugs in here? Insects or anything? Carter, look at this, Carter. This is an emperor moth cocoon. And the man found it and he took it home to see what happened. He put it in an aquarium, and one day a small hole opened up at the top. See the small hole there? And for several hours, the moth struggled but couldn't seem to force its body past a certain point in that little hole. While the man thought that something was wrong, he took some scissors and cut open the cocoon, and the moth came out. No problem at all. It came right around, cut the cocoon off. But its body was really big and swollen. The wings were small and shriveled. I mean, he expected that just in a few hours, the wings would spread out in all their natural beauty, but they never did. Instead of developing into an insect free to fly wherever he wanted to, this moth spent its life dragging around a swollen body and shriveled wings. You see, that was God's plan. The constriction of the cocoon and the struggle that the moth was supposed to go through to get out of the cocoon was necessary to pass through the tiny opening. And that is God's way of forcing fluid from the body into the wings. So when the man cut the cocoon, he thought that he was helping the moth. He thought he was doing some good, but in reality, it was doing more harm than good. Sometimes the struggle is exactly what we need. You see, the healing we want from our pain and our suffering is not quick and it's not easy because we can't always find God in our situations. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not there. It's just that sometimes we don't see him or feel him, but he's still there. In John 9, verse 6, we read where Jesus spits on the ground and makes clay. He makes a mud pie. And he puts it on the eyes of a blind man. Now, the mud pack was not the healing power. The mud pack didn't heal him. It was not miracle mud from the Himalayas. That's not what Jesus made up there. No, it was the healing power of Jesus, not the mud. Now, Jesus could have just touched the man, his eyes, and he healed him. He could have just said it, and it happened, and just not even use the mud, right? I mean, that's what Jesus can do. So what's the spit and the mud for? Maybe that is why that sometimes our suffering seems to last so long that we are looking for another way. We're looking for an alternative way. Maybe we are resisting God's involvement in our lives because it's not what we expected to happen. Some of our questions, they just don't have, there's no answer for them. Just like he talked about faith, Stephen Curtis Chapman. We have questions. We don't know the answers, but we have faith. We have faith. Back to the blind man in the story, John 19 and 18. The Jewish leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind and could now see. So they called in his parents and they asked him, "Is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he now see?" His parents said, "Well, we know this is our son, and then he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Why don't you ask him? He's old enough to speak for himself." I love that verse. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, "He is old enough, ask him." So the second time they called in the man who had been blind and told him, "God should get the glory for this because we know this man Jesus is a sinner." "I don't know whether he is a sinner," the man replied, "but I know this. I was blind, and now I can see." No one really understands what's going on here. I mean, the man's parents were called in to verify that this was or is their blind son, and they can't really explain why. Pain and suffering doesn't always have explanations, but they do come with a promise. I am with you. Trust me. That is the hardest thing that I think as humans that we can do. We want to control the situation. We want to control our lives. God says, trust me. Until we can do that, we will be lost. God has control. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you. God is saying this, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not disaster, to give you future and a hope. Somerset Maugham, he's an English writer. He once wrote a story about a janitor at St. Peter's Church in London. And one day the man's boss found out that the janitor was illiterate, couldn't read. And so they fired him. So without a job, this man invested his little savings into a tiny tobacco shop where he did really well there. And so he opened another shop, and he ended up opening a chain of tobacco stores worth several $100,000. And one day the man's banker said, you've done really well for an illiterate, but where would you be if you could read or write? What the banker was saying, how much more could you have accomplished if you had the ability like most of us had, if you could read or write? Where would you be if you could do that? Well, Henry said, I'd be a janitor for St. Peter's Church in the Ville Square. That's where I'd be. Those who know the path to God can find it, even in the dark. Sometimes it takes the rocky, hard path with many bumps and bruises and some pain in order to meet Jesus on His terms. Sam and Laura have struggled for a long time to have a baby. And we pray for you all the time. And you just can't imagine the pain you all go through. Also, you can't go through your pain alone. Share it with others. The way through suffering and to find our healing is to allow others to help us. The man in our story, he was born blind. I mean, he lived as a beggar. Now remember that there were no social programs back then. No housing allowance, no food stamps or heating assistance, no Medicare. Whatever a blind person got, he had to beg for. So after Jesus smeared this mud pack on his eyes, he says, now go wash in this pool of Siloam. That's the pool of Siloam. Now how do you think a blind man is going to do that with mud on his eyes? How could he do that? Could physically move from where he was to where he was told to go, to the pool. The man, obviously, he had some help. Somebody was there to help him, right? The Christian faith is a helping hand. We are in it together. And Jesus said, I'll build my church. Church, not churches. We divided ourselves up. We are one body in Christ. And one of the great truths of the church is that we are all members of one body. And when one hurts, we all hurt. One afternoon on May the 20th in 2003, an intense, destructive F5, and some of you know that scale. F5 is the largest, am I right? Anybody know that? Struck Moore, Oklahoma. And just as the school day was winding down, and the teachers and the students at Plaza Tower Elementary School, they did not know that the F5 tornado, with wind speeds of 318 miles an hour, was heading right for them. You got that next one? The path. I don't know if you can see there. This is the tornado path right here, the blue line. And there's Plaza Tower Elementary School. They can't move the school. The tornado's not going to move. They can't get all the kids out in time. I just can't imagine what's going through their mind. What's going through the kids' mind of how scared that they would be. Where do we go? What do we do? We got to listen to the teacher. What's the teacher going to say? What if I got to keep my kids safe? Where do I go? A lot of educators in this room, and you know the panic that must have been. I can imagine the school administration. How am I going to keep everybody safe? Or being at home and seeing a tornado. What are my kids? My kids down at the school. Where do I go? How do I get there? It was headed right for them. The students were instructed to gather in the cafeteria and the hallways, and then the third most powerful tornado in U.S. history hit the school head on. This is a short clip of the gymnasium at that school. You can cut that off. Show the picture. This is the aftermath of the school. There's not much still left. I don't know if you can see all that. But after the dust settled, the school was completely destroyed. Moms and dads were desperately trying to find their kids, and sadly, 7 little kids did not survive. We hurt for them and their families. We stand with them in the season of their grief. Because as Christians, that's what we do. Because we have the perfect example. There is no worse pain than when you feel like, than when you're going through the hard times alone. But we have, and we do see God at work. God still performs miracles, and when He is at work in our life, we must not see it when we're going through the storm. It's hard to see through the storm. But when you look back, there is no doubt that He has us in our hands. God still performs miracles. One of the most humblest and gentlest men I've ever met, Kenny Rohr, first week back, brother. We love you. We're praying for you for your doctor's appointment. A lot of you know Kenny's story because I mention it quite often. Given 6 months to live. Doctors were wrong, weren't they, brother? They were wrong. He defeated cancer. Went through the chemo. What Davey went through down at Duke University. A year and a half ago, got another spot on his neck. And he went through, I went down with him a couple of days, went through the chemo and the radiation. You're still going, ain't you, brother? God is with you the whole time, wasn't He? He told me, I don't know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're at the hotel room. And Debbie was here, and you was by yourself in the hotel room.
I started by myself, and I went back to work. And before I started my treatment, she said, I need to give you something, Jim. I need to give you something. Well, they never did. And the first day I was at work, she said, I've got that in the car. I can't give you this. And when he come back, he had a little coin that had footprints in it and said, I've been with you, I was with you in the sand.
Footprints in the sand.
I asked him, he said, why were you with me, Jesus? He said, I was carrying you.
Amen.
Right then I felt bad. I said, man, he was with me the whole time. I didn't even realize.
I don't know if anybody, I know one line can't hurt, but Kenny just said that the gentleman gave him a coin with footprints in the sand to remind him that he was not alone. Even though you felt alone in that hotel room, going through all the treatments. And imagine what's going through your mind thinking, I got 6 months to live. God had a better plan, my brother. God had something else going on. It does not seem to make sense in life sometimes. I like to invite you to reach out to others and allow them to help you. Now, church, we must understand that Jesus, this is a hard point to get. Jesus didn't come to this world and die on a cross to save us from car crashes and cancer and drug addiction and pandemics and race riots. No, He came to save us from sin. He sees the bigger picture so we can live eternally with Him. And many of us, we have been through what you're going through right now. Pain and suffering is not God's way of punishing us. Riots, racism, hatred, virus, forest fires, bankruptcy, hunger, divorce, a bully at school or work, death of a parent, spouse, or child. These things were not sent to punish us, but through suffering, we can discover God's love for us in a way that we never thought possible. And when troubling days come, and they will come, and I pray that you let God hold on when everything around you seems to be falling apart. June 12, 1987, President Reagan, great president, demanded that the president of Russia, Mikhail Gorbachev, put an end to the Cold War by tearing down the Berlin Wall. You got that?
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And on November the 9th, 2 years later, the wall came down. It had been in place since World War II. You got that picture of the wall? And when the Berlin Wall came down, it was really the first time that the world, the free world, could see some of the devastation of the prisons there and the faded battlefields from World War II. And as those prisons were explored, these humble words were found, wrote on a wall inside of a prison cell where some of the Jews were held captive. And they had been untouched in Poland since World War II. You have that next one? I believe in the sun, even when it's not shining. I believe in love, even when I don't feel it. And I believe in God when He is silent. Luke, you back? Come on up, Luke. There's a music video, and I don't have time to watch many music videos, but this one got my attention. And the song's called Why God. Anybody ever heard it by Austin French? And it just a couple minutes long. I just want you to listen to the words.